Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Before we get into the It's Fixed, I thought I'd show you something that was super annoying, and hopefully that they fix really soon. I know a lot of people don't get bothered by this stuff, but it does my head in. This is the demonstration camouflage on the F-15C, which is the new vehicle for America. And on the camo, which looks really nice, you have this like writing back here, which says beautiful, kind of like, I suppose, paragraph. And then, if you have a look on the other side, somebody has just mirrored it. And it is completely backward and also shouldn't be there. Hope you enjoy this information, and hopefully it bugs you as much as it bugs me. So let's get into the main news for the video. There's an It's Fixed out, and it seems like they've done more work on trying to fix countermeasures and also the ammunition stuff, which has been brought up a few times. Basically, there was a lot of ammunition which was getting loaded in the wrong places, and now they have been working on it. The countermeasure stuff has been a constant issue since the update started. I don't know if I've ever seen such a mess of a mechanic, especially one that used to work pretty well, even in the previous changelogs or even in the previous updates. There wasn't really a ton of changes to countermeasures, and now that we've had this, it seems like it's just broken the whole system. So that is a bit of a problem. But let's get started on the different stuff that has been fixed. The first one is the ammunition itself. So what was ended up happening with ammunition is instead of it just loading where it should have in the first stage, the first place it was loading was actually the second stage. And if you had several second stages, it basically prioritized the last stage of it, or the lowest priority. So they completely flipped where you would actually put ammo. So if you were loading ammo into your first stage, it would actually load it into the second stage, and so on and so forth. This affected a lot of vehicles, and the one that at least I remember people talking about was the Abrams, since the Abrams has some comical like little piece of ammunition in the center of the hull where it's like 4 or 5 rounds, so it's really easy to see what's kind of going on with it. So the fact that they've fixed this is huge, because it means increased survivability again for a lot of those vehicles, instead of just having fat ammo racks that people can go after. Also, with the visual weapon selector, they have fixed a few things. The main thing they've actually changed, though, is the control that it's attached to. Now remember, you can actually customize any controls in the game if you want to. You only have to go to controls to do it, and I had to do it with the weapon selector, because they decided to put this at Shift A, and also they decided to put switch countermeasures on Shift D. And for me, I use WASD to be able to control my vehicle. So and also Shift is the countermeasure button, or the periodic countermeasure button. So what would happen is if I hit Shift A, which was, rolling and then also firing countermeasures, it would pop up the menu, and if I hit Shift D, then my flares would disappear because it would switch over to chaff only mode. So yeah, kind of annoying, but luckily now all that's fixed, at least for me, and what they've decided to do is they've changed the default key for the weapon selector to caps lock instead of Shift A, since it's not in the way. But yeah, it's one of those which I feel like could have done with a little bit more thought, since it seems like a lot of people have been having issues with this one, and that kind of sucks. It's actually made me, this update, move around some of my controls, so nowadays I actually use caps lock for the weapon selector, which technically is the same thing, but it actually, switches through them quickly, and it's been working pretty well. The problem I have with War Thunder is I have tiny bloody hands, and with tiny hands it means I can't move as much across the keyboard, so therefore I have to localize everything around a small area, and it just kind of sucks. So I have a lot of stuff on the left hand side of the keyboard, but I'm sure people have it a bit more spread out. They've also fixed a couple of bugs relating to the selector as well, including messages in the battle overlapping it, and also the streak aircraft flying in air events in ground battles didn't have the selector available. One of the things that I've found with the selector is I can't collapse it, so I've seen some people can collapse and expand it. At least for me, I wasn't able to, so that was kind of a bit weird. They've also fixed shape charge shells. Basically, what was happening with shaped charge shells is they would sometimes ignore the first piece of armor that they faced in their path, and therefore no shrapnel formed, which is just ridiculous. So yeah, they were grossly overperforming, is probably the way to put that. That is just nuts that is a thing. The other thing they've also done on a bunch of air maps is they've made it so certain trees are not as tall. So with the multipathing changes, basically now you have to be a lot lower to the ground than you were previously, and even then, a lot of the time it doesn't seem to work against semi-active or active radar homing missiles. The problem you ran into is a lot of maps actually have some pretty tall trees, so there was no way of actually getting under the multipath limit, let's say, which was 60 meters. So now what they've done on a bunch of different maps, so stuff like Guiana Highlands, Vietnam Hills, Mysterious Valley, and Rice Terrace locations, they have reduced the height of some trees. And also, they've said that they know there's a problem on Golan Heights, Rocky Pillars, Rocky Canyon, and they're working on those too. So yeah, hopefully you won't just have random huge trees everywhere, which kind of get in the way of things. The main thing that I've found, at least, with the high-tier meta right now, is the fact that it's very hard to dodge semi-actives and also active radar homing missiles. It's just a pain. And if you don't have them, there's not really a ton you can do, and unfortunately a lot of vehicles don't have them. Also, with the separate flare and chaff fixes, they have tried to fix a bunch of them, which we'll go through individually, but yeah, it's another part which has been worked on consistently, and hopefully now, after a week, or a bit more of a week with the update coming out, it will be fixed. Then also the naval fleet, they've actually fixed a bunch of those too. There was an issue with the protection analysis where it didn't work in custom hangars. They've fixed that now. And also there was a bug where multiple fixed torpedo launchers could launch in a single salvo with torpedo launcher selection enabled. So basically, if you were selecting a specific torpedo, it wouldn't fire that one, it would fire all of them. So kind of defeating the point of the whole thing. So yeah, kind of ridiculous in its setup. Then we have a changelog today as well, which was 2.37.0.27. This one goes through a lot of the changes we just talked about in the ITSFix, but also a bunch of extra ones. So there was a bug that caused the countermeasure counter in the interface to twitch, changing its values multiple times when releasing flares or chaff, and that has been fixed. So hopefully that fixes a few of the other issues that are around. One of the problems I have is when I use the periodic countermeasure thing, it will tell me that my countermeasures are empty when they are definitely not empty, and it will actually change the periodic countermeasure button. Instead of it being like an on or off, it will just be if you hit it, then it will fire the chaff and countermeasure at the same time. So it's just really weird. I've never seen a bug kind of do stuff like that, but yeah, that is a bit of a problem. The Roy Volk, they fixed the bug where you couldn't load all of the countermeasures on it, and then also the Apache, you couldn't load the large caliber countermeasures, so they fixed that too. And then also the Sea Harrier FA2, there was a bug on that where you couldn't load the BOL pod countermeasures. So all of those will now become more survivable. The AIM-7F and 7M, there was a bug on their premature self-destruction of the missile has been fixed, so they've become more deadly again. The MiG-23 and 27, the speed loss in a forced turn has been reduced. Automatic correction of the wing sweep angles has been reconfigured to improve maneuvering at average speeds. So I wonder if now they're back to pre-update setup, which they got heavily nerfed in this update, not just through their flight model, but also through their radar usage. So yeah, now the radar modes automatically switch, which means you can't keep them on the MTI mode all the time, which means that you can't basically keep it in PD mode all the time, and that sucks. The Super Mr. B2 and the SAR and the Sandbad, there was fuel mass has been reduced on these things. The thrust, maximum speed, and angular speed of a steady turn at low altitude has been increased, which is nice, because those machines were pretty slow, pretty sluggish, even though most of them had afterburners. The SAR is funny, because it's straight up just like a missile plane. So you take it to fire the Sharir 2s, or the Shafrir 2s. I can't remember the name, but the missiles themselves are super fun, but the Sahar itself is pretty rough. The Mustaf 4A has a maximum fuel amount been decreased to 1,660 kilos, so we'll have to see what goes on with that. It says that one of the fuel tanks is not fueled for combat missions, which is kind of odd. Why would you keep it there then? Is for testing or something? There was also a bug in single missions that sometimes caused the inability to control allied aircraft after switching to them. So that's been fixed too, which is cool to see. There was also a bunch of ground vehicle changes too. We've been through the major ones, but there are some specific vehicle ones. The CV9035DK, there was gaps in the armor and a piece of the driver's control sticking out of the armor. So that's been fixed, so you could just machine gun through it, which is quite funny. The T-80UE-1, the sight of the anti-aircraft gun has been fixed, and also there was a bug that caused the gun to be shifted in the commander's sight with aim mode turned on. That's been fixed too, so it won't be moving around the place. The T-80UK, there was a low poly display of the gunner model in the X-ray view has been fixed. That to me is one of my favorite bugs. No idea why it happens, but it just happens every so often to different vehicles in the game, and I find it great. I think it's funny as all hell. So yeah, it's it's always funny to see the good old low poly guys. The XM800T as well, they actually have changed it quite a bit. So the location and appearance of the ammo has been fixed. So all racks except the one connected to the gun have been removed, and the shape of the main ammo rack has been changed. So that basically means you have a centralized ammo rack instead of the one that it had previously, which is it had ammo boxes on the side of the vehicle. So your survivability technically should be higher now. It still doesn't have a lot of survivability, but you don't use a vehicle like that for survivability. You use it to have a bit of fun. The ADATs have been changed too. The visual effect of the smoke trail from the MIM-146 missile has been corrected to accommodate the use of smokeless propellant. So it'll be easier to actually see the missile instead of your whole screen being covered in smoke. The 120S, the hydraulic pump description in the X-ray view, was previously named as horizontal drive. That's been fixed. And the M908 shell, the shell type has been changed to HEOR, which is high explosive obstacle reduction, which I'm guessing just means, hey, that thing over there, yeah, we're going to explode it, which I suppose makes sense. They fixed the BMD-4 and the ZBD-04A's first stage ammo. The Namer also, the overestimated thickness of the barrel has been reduced from 35 to 10 millimeters. And there was a bug that prevented the overheat of the barrel. That's been fixed too, which is nice. The Weasel 1A4, there was a bug that caused the overpressure effect to work on the crew when hitting the cannon breech and the ammo, which are located outside of the crew compartment. That's been fixed. I feel like a lot of vehicles have had that issue over like the years. And then also the 279. There was a bug that caused the tank to be tilted towards the rear side. That's been fixed. So would that mean that if you shot its upper glacis, the rounds would ricochet more? Interesting. There was also a bug that caused hits on trees by purely kinetic shells to play an explosion effect. So they fixed that too. And also there was some naval vessel fixes as well. There was a bug where multiple fixed torpedo launches could launch in a single salvo. We already talked about this. The Haruna and also the Congo. There was a bug that led to the destruction of these ships through listing with insufficient damage to cause such high list angles. So you would just basically fall over, even though there was no reason to. The Andrea Doria, the firing angles of the 40mm anti-aircraft guns have been adjusted. For Paris, the description of the rangefinders of the main battery stern turrets have been added. And the Marat, a bug that allowed the central main battery turrets to be fired through the central funnel, has been fixed, which is kind of a large bug, since obviously that gives you much more firepower than you had previously, so that's actually a very good fix. In the interface setup, there was missing localization for researchable belts and ammunition in the battle results screen, so it would probably just show you the wrong thing. And also, at the same time, you now have the ability to use the visual weapon selector on consoles. You couldn't before, it was only on PC. The ability to use it for streak aircraft and ground air battles will also soon be available, so you'll be able to see it there, which is kind of cool. There was also a bug where the visual weapon selector was missing in airstreak events and ground battles, so they fixed that as well. And also a bug where tooltips were superimposed over the visual weapon selector. That's been fixed too. So a lot of fixes with the weapon selector, which I feel like is one of those which people have questioned why they added it. At the end of the day, the reason why you add stuff like that is just to make things easier to use. For sound, there was a bug that caused the missile and flare launch sounds to be missing in some cases, so I'm glad they fixed that, because those sounds, especially the missile ones, are really nice. You know, the new ones, the way that they sound are beautiful, so hopefully they can make sure people can hear them. And then also the last one is there was a bug with ambient occlusion that caused 80 gem smoke launchers and anti-aircraft guns to become very dark in color on winter maps, and that's been fixed too. So overall, a lot of pretty cool stuff at the end of the day. Hopefully this leads to the end of a lot of the problems that people have been having for this update. There have been quite a lot of them, especially in the areas where they've added a bunch of new vehicles. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.